My name is Stephanie, and I am 32 years old. I built a successful career in finance despite growing up in the shadow of my perfect sister, Sienna. I thought I had made peace with my parents always favoring her until last month at our family reunion. "You only sent 60 cents?" my dad shouted, embarrassing me in front of everyone. "Sienna sends $5,000 a month," I said quietly. That was me. Mom snapped. "Stop stealing her credit." So I stopped the payments. If you have ever felt invisible in your own family, let me know where you are watching from, and hit subscribe to follow my journey. Growing up in a modest suburban home in Chicago, our family of four seemed picture perfect from the outside. My parents had immigrated from Korea when I was just 2 years old, determined to build a better life in America. Dad worked 60-hour weeks at his engineering job, while Mom ran a small tailoring business from our basement. They were hard-working, dedicated parents who sacrificed everything for their American dream. And at the center of that dream was my sister, Sienna, 3 years younger than me. From my earliest memories, there was always something special about how my parents treated Sienna. It started with small things that most people would dismiss as normal sibling dynamics. When Sienna wanted my toys, Mom would say, "Stephanie, sharing is caring. You are the big sister. You need to set an example." When Sienna broke my science project the night before it was due, Dad explained, "She is just a child, Stephanie. You should have kept it out of reach." By age 7, I had become accustomed to putting Sienna first. My clothes automatically became hers once I outgrew them. But when Mom went shopping, Sienna always got new outfits, while I got hand-me-downs from our cousins. "We need to save money for your college," Mom would explain. But somehow that logic never applied to Sienna. Birthdays and Christmas mornings told the same story. On my 10th birthday, I received a set of encyclopedias, because they would help with school, while Sienna got the portable CD player I had been begging for all year. When I couldn't hide my disappointment, Dad pulled me aside and said, "A smart girl like you should appreciate education more than toys, Stephanie." The pattern continued through every aspect of our childhood. I was expected to help with dinner, wash dishes, and fold laundry by age 11, tasks that Sienna was still too young to handle even when she reached the same age. I had a 9 p.m. curfew throughout middle school, while Sienna was allowed to stay out until 10 p.m. from 6th grade. One particular memory stands out sharply. When I was 13, I won first place in a regional piano competition after practicing for months. The recital was scheduled for a Saturday afternoon, and I had reminded my parents repeatedly about the date. That morning, Sienna developed a mild fever of 100 degrees. Nothing serious, just a common cold. Our neighbor, Mrs. Peterson, who had been like a grandmother to us, offered to stay with Sienna for the 2 hours my parents would be gone. "We cannot leave your sister when she is sick," Mom declared, closing the discussion. "You understand, right? Family comes first." I performed to an audience of strangers that day, accepting my gold certificate with a practiced smile while scanning the crowd for faces that were not there. When I returned home, Sienna was watching television with a popsicle, her fever apparently forgotten. No one asked about my performance. As we entered high school, the differences in how we were treated became even more pronounced. I maintained a 4.0 GPA while participating in student government and volunteering at the local hospital on weekends. My achievements were met with nods and brief acknowledgments. "That is what we expect from you, Stephanie." Meanwhile, Sienna struggled to maintain a 3.0 average, but her B- in algebra was celebrated because math is so difficult, and her participation in the school play warranted a special family dinner out, even though she had only a minor role. When I was accepted to all 5 colleges I applied to, including 2 Ivy League schools, Dad simply said, "Good. Now we need to see about scholarships because we cannot afford full tuition." A year later, when Sienna was accepted to just one state school, my parents took her on a weekend trip to New York to celebrate. The most painful part was that I genuinely loved my sister. Sienna was charming, creative, and funny. She could light up a room with her laughter and had a natural talent for making people feel special. It was not her fault that our parents placed her on a pedestal. In quiet moments when it was just the two of us, we shared secrets and dreams like sisters should. But those moments became increasingly rare as the years passed. By 17, I had learned to find validation outside my family. My teachers recognized my potential, offering mentorship and encouragement. My close friends provided the emotional support that was missing at home. I babysit for extra money, saving every dollar in a secret account my parents knew nothing about. I was preparing for independence long before I actually left home. The pattern was so consistent that it became predictable. If Sienna and I both had news to share at dinner, she would always be invited to speak first. If we both needed something, her needs were addressed before mine. If we both made mistakes, her forgiveness came swiftly, while my repentance required extensive proof. I became the reliable one, the responsible one, the one who did not need attention or praise, because I had learned to function without it. My achievements were expected, my failures unacceptable. Meanwhile, Sienna flourished under the warmth of unconditional approval, never developing the resilience that comes from facing genuine challenges or criticism. This was the reality of my childhood. Not dramatic abuse or neglect, but the quiet, constant message that I was somehow less deserving of attention, celebration, and understanding. It was death by 1,000 paper cuts, each one too small to justify complaint, but collectively leaving scars that would take years to heal. The day I left for college was surprisingly anticlimactic. Mom packed me a lunch for the 3-hour drive to Northwestern University, while Dad loaded my few belongings into our family sedan. Sienna hugged me tightly and whispered, "I will miss you," the only words that brought tears to my eyes that morning. The drive was mostly silent. Dad mentioned gas prices and the weather forecast. Mom reminded me to call once a week. Neither asked about my feelings or offered reassurance about this major life transition. When we arrived at my dormitory, they helped carry my things to my room, met my roommate with polite smiles, and then checked their watches. "We should get back before traffic gets bad," Dad announced after just 45 minutes on campus. Mom handed me a small envelope containing $300. "For emergencies," she said. Then they were gone, leaving me alone in a new world that felt both terrifying and liberating. My scholarship covered 70% of my tuition, but books, supplies, and living expenses quickly depleted my savings. Within 2 weeks, I had secured 3 part-time jobs: morning shifts at the campus coffee shop, afternoon hours at the library, and weekend administrative work for the business school. Between classes and work, I averaged 5 hours of sleep per night. Meanwhile, my first phone call home was dominated by news of Sienna's senior year homecoming dress and the family's plans to visit colleges the following month. "We want to make sure she ends up somewhere special," Mom explained. "Dad is taking time off work for the tours." I bit back the reminder that no one had taken time off for my college search. Instead, I asked practical questions about accessing my health insurance information and whether I could claim the remaining textbook costs on their tax return. By midterms, I had developed an efficient system. Study at the library until closing, continue in the 24-hour campus center until dawn, shower at the gym, work the morning shift fueled by free coffee, attend classes, nap for 30 minutes between lectures, work the afternoon shift, study during dinner, repeat. My roommate Jennifer began leaving, encouraging notes on my desk and occasionally bringing me proper meals when she noticed I was subsisting on protein bars and campus coffee. My professors noticed too. Dr. Harrington, my economics professor, kept me after class one day. "Your work is exceptional, Stephanie, but you look exhausted. Are you okay?" That simple question of concern nearly broke me. I managed to maintain composure as I explained my schedule and financial situation. He listened carefully before suggesting a research assistant position that paid better than my current jobs and would look impressive on graduate school applications. "You have real talent," he said, "but you need to take care of yourself too. Burnout is real." His mentorship changed my trajectory. The research position not only improved my financial situation, but connected me with influential professors and industry professionals. I was able to drop one of my other jobs and occasionally get 6 hours of sleep instead of 5. Back home, Sienna was accepted to UCLA with a partial scholarship. My parents took out a second mortgage on their house to cover her full expenses, including an off-campus apartment because dorm life would be too stressful for her. During our weekly calls, Mom detailed the shopping trips for Sienna's dorm room decor and the special graduation party they were planning. "Will you come home for her graduation?" Mom asked. "I cannot," I replied. "I have finals that week and cannot miss them." The disapproval was palpable through the phone. "Family should come first, Stephanie. You always choose other priorities." I did not mention that no one had attended my high school graduation dinner because Sienna had a dance recital the same evening. Some arguments were not worth having. As semesters passed, the calls home became shorter and less frequent. I immersed myself in campus life, making close friends who appreciated my dedication and intelligence. I joined the investment club and discovered a passion for financial analysis. I dated occasionally, but kept relationships casual, unable to fully trust anyone with my deepest feelings. My junior year, Sienna decided that UCLA was not the right fit and transferred to NYU to study fashion merchandising. This required additional financial support from our parents, which they provided without question. Meanwhile, I was applying for prestigious summer internships to bolster my resume and earning potential. When I secured an internship at Goldman Sachs for the summer, I called home with the news. Dad answered with a distracted hello, and I could hear Sienna talking animatedly in the background. "Dad, I got the Goldman internship. Only 8 people from Northwestern were selected." "That is nice, Stephanie," he replied. "Can I call you back? We are helping Sienna prepare for her interview with a fashion magazine. It is very important." He never called back. By senior year, I had multiple job offers from top financial firms. I graduated summa cum laude, with honors in economics and a minor in data science. My parents did attend my graduation ceremony, arriving late and leaving immediately after for their flight back home. The celebration dinner was at an upscale restaurant near campus, paid for with my own internship earnings. Mom spent most of the meal showing me photos of Sienna's new apartment in New York and explaining how they were helping her network in the fashion industry. "She is struggling a bit with her classes," Mom confided, "but her professor says she has amazing creative vision. We are so proud." "And are you proud of me too?" I asked quietly, surprising myself with the vulnerability. Dad looked up from his steak, genuinely confused. "Of course, you have always done well academically. That is expected." Expected. Not celebrated or admired. Just expected. I accepted a position at Morgan Stanley in New York, not telling my parents that one reason for choosing that location was to be near Sienna. Despite everything, I missed my sister and hoped that away from our parents' dynamics, we might rebuild our relationship as adults. The starting salary was impressive, especially for a new graduate. I found a small but decent apartment in Brooklyn and threw myself into work with the same intensity I had applied to my studies. Within 6 months, I was outperforming colleagues with years more experience. My direct manager, Linda, became another important mentor, guiding me through office politics and encouraging me to speak up in meetings dominated by male voices. "You have incredible instincts," she told me, "but you need to learn to take credit for your ideas. I notice you often do the work and let others present it. That has to stop." Her observation hit a nerve. I had been conditioned to believe that my contributions were simply expected, not worthy of special recognition. Changing that mindset would prove to be one of my greatest challenges. 3 years into my career at Morgan Stanley, I had already received 2 promotions. I had moved from junior analyst to senior analyst and then to associate much faster than the typical timeline. My starting salary of $75,000 had grown to $120,000, plus substantial performance bonuses. I had moved to a better apartment in Manhattan and started building a respectable investment portfolio. My relationship with my family remained distant but cordial. Weekly calls had become monthly. Visits home happened only during major holidays, and even then, they were brief and somewhat tense. Sienna and I occasionally met for lunch in the city, but our conversations remained superficial. She would talk about parties and fashion shows while I listened and paid the bill. She never asked about my work or my life. Then, During one of our monthly calls, Mom mentioned something concerning. "Your father had to reduce his hours at work," she said casually. "His blood pressure has been too high, and the doctor insisted." "Is he okay?" I asked, immediately worried. "He will be fine," Mom assured me. "But with the reduced income and Sienna needing help with her rent again, things are a bit tight right now." This was the first I had heard about financial problems. I knew that supporting Sienna through multiple changes in education and career direction had been expensive, but I had assumed my parents were managing. Now I realized they might be struggling more than they let on. "How tight is tight?" I pressed. "Are you behind on bills?" Mom hesitated before admitting, "The mortgage payment was late last month, and we had to use credit cards for some medical expenses not covered by insurance." I made a decision in that moment. "Mom, I want to help. I'm doing well at work, and I can send some money each month to help with expenses." No, Mom protested weakly. "You should save your money. We will manage." But I insisted, and the next day, I set up an automatic monthly transfer of $2,000 to my parents' bank account. I marked it as anonymous, listing only family support in the transfer notes. I did not want them to feel obligated to thank me or, worse, to suddenly show interest in my life because of money. The help should be unconditional, just as their support of Sienna had always been. 6 months later, after receiving another substantial promotion and raise, I increased the monthly amount to $5,000. The payments were significant, even with my income, representing about 30% of my take-home pay, but knowing my parents were more financially secure gave me peace of mind. During a brief visit home that Christmas, I noticed subtle improvements in their living situation. The refrigerator was newer. Dad mentioned having fully paid off one of their credit cards. Mom was considering reducing her tailoring work to focus on her health. They seemed less stressed, and that made the sacrifice worthwhile. At dinner that evening, Dad raised his glass in a toast. "We have been blessed this year," he said solemnly, "especially thanks to your sister." I looked at Sienna, confused. "Sienna has been sending us money every month," Mom explained proudly. $5,000! Can you believe how successful she has become? She says her fashion consulting business is really taking off. I nearly choked on my wine. Sienna caught my eye across the table and quickly looked away, a flush spreading across her cheeks. "That is amazing," I managed to say. "I had no idea." "She insists on keeping it anonymous in the bank transfers," Dad added. "So humble, our Sienna, never wanting recognition." The irony was almost too much to bear. Sienna was taking credit for my financial support, while, according to occasional social media posts and our infrequent lunch meetings, she was actually struggling to find steady employment in the fashion industry. Her LinkedIn profile listed her as a freelance fashion consultant, but I had never heard her mention any actual clients. Later that night, I confronted Sienna in the kitchen while our parents slept. "You told them you are the one sending the money?" I kept my voice low but could not hide my anger. Sienna at least had the decency to look ashamed. "I did not tell them directly," she whispered. "They assumed it was me because the transfers were anonymous, and I just did not correct them." "Why would you do that? That money comes from my hard work. I send it because I care about them, not for recognition, but it is still my sacrifice." Tears filled her eyes. "You do not understand what it is like, Stephanie. You have always been the smart one, the successful one. Mom and Dad talk about your Wall Street job like you are some financial genius. I have nothing to show for myself. When they assumed the money was from me, for once they looked at me with real pride, not just because I am their baby, but because I accomplished something." Her explanation left me speechless. In her mind, I was the favorite child, the golden standard she could never live up to. Our perceptions of our family dynamics were completely opposite. "Sienna, that is not true. They have always preferred you, always made excuses for you, always celebrated you while expecting perfection from me." She shook her head stubbornly. "That is not how it feels to me." We reached no resolution that night. I returned to New York, conflicted and hurt, but still unwilling to expose Sienna's lie. Despite everything, they were my family, and I did not want to damage their relationships further. The money was helping my parents, and that had been my original goal. Did it really matter who got the credit? So I continued the monthly transfers, telling myself that family support transcended recognition. Each time I processed the payment, I felt a mix of resentment and resignation. This pattern continued for almost 4 years, during which my career continued to flourish while, from what little I gathered, Sienna bounced between temporary jobs and creative endeavors that never quite materialized into stable employment. During those years, I threw myself even more intensely into my work. I rarely dated, rarely took vacations, and built few close friendships outside of professional connections. My apartment was beautifully furnished but rarely saw visitors. My life was successful by external metrics, but increasingly hollow in ways that mattered more. Each family call brought news of how Sienna remained the center of my parents' world. They traveled to New York to see her fashion installations, but never contacted me during these visits. They remembered her birthday with elaborate gifts while sending me generic gift cards. And they continued to praise her generosity in supporting them financially, never knowing the truth. I told myself it did not matter. I told myself I had made peace with my role in the family. I told myself I was above needing their approval or recognition. I was lying to myself. Last month marked my parents' 35th wedding anniversary. Mom had been planning a large celebration for nearly a year, inviting relatives from across the country, and even a few from Korea. The event would be held at a rented venue near their home in Chicago, and everyone was expected to attend. No excuses accepted. I arranged time off work, booked a flight, and reserved a hotel room, knowing that staying in my childhood home for 3 days would be too emotionally draining. Sienna called me the week before, unusually animated. "Are you excited about the anniversary party? Mom has been driving everyone crazy with the preparations. I helped choose the decorations. It is going to be amazing." "Sounds great," I replied, trying to match her enthusiasm. "Do they need help with anything else? I could contribute to the catering costs." "No need," Sienna said quickly. "I have taken care of all that. You know, from my monthly support, I just diverted some of the money to pay for the party instead." The casual way she claimed credit for my money still stung, but I had grown accustomed to it. "That is thoughtful of you," I said flatly. The day of the party arrived with perfect early summer weather. I wore a navy blue cocktail dress, professional but elegant, my armor for family gatherings. When I arrived at the venue, the celebration was already in full swing. At least 60 people filled the decorated hall, many faces I barely recognized from childhood. Mom spotted me first, waving excitedly from across the room where she stood with a group of aunts. Her face looked younger somehow, happier than I remembered. The financial security of recent years had clearly reduced her stress levels. "Stephanie, you made it!" She embraced me briefly before turning to her sisters. "This is my older daughter, the investment banker in New York." "Asset manager," I corrected automatically, though no one seemed to notice the difference. "Such a smart girl, always good with numbers," one aunt commented. "And still single? A career woman." The way she said career woman made it sound like a consolation prize. Before I could respond, Mom was already redirecting the conversation. "Have you seen the photo display Sienna created? She collected pictures from our entire marriage. So creative, that girl." I excused myself to find Dad, who was holding court near the bar, telling animated stories to a group of his old colleagues. He paused when he saw me, offering a quick side hug. "Stephanie, good to see you. Did you just arrive? The party started 2 hours ago." "My flight landed at 3, Dad. I came straight from the airport." I did not mention that the invitation had clearly stated a 6 p.m. start time. "Well, you are here now. Get yourself a drink. We will do the toasts soon." Throughout the evening, I drifted between conversations, always on the periphery. Relatives asked surface-level questions about my job, without waiting for real answers. Several commented on how I had always been the serious one while Sienna was the life of the party. I maintained a pleasant smile and kept my responses brief and positive. The formal program began with a series of toasts to my parents. Various family members shared memories and congratulations. Sienna gave a tearful speech about our parents' loving example, which received enthusiastic applause. When it was my turn, I spoke about their work ethic and determination, qualities I had genuinely admired and emulated. The response was polite but subdued. After the toasts, gifts were presented. Most were symbolic or sentimental. Photo albums, framed poems, handcrafted items. I had sent a large flower arrangement that morning and brought a card with me containing a check for $60, a symbolic amount for luck rather than a main gift. I planned to discuss setting up a vacation fund for them privately, away from the public gift-giving. When Dad opened my card, his expression changed. He looked at the check, then at me, confusion turning to disappointment and then anger. "You only sent 60 cents?" he shouted, misreading the amount in his agitation and embarrassing me in front of everyone gathered around the gift table. "Sienna sends $5,000 a month." A horrified silence fell over the immediate area. I felt blood rush to my face as dozens of eyes turned toward me. "That was me," I said quietly, the words slipping out before I could stop them. Mom stepped forward quickly, her face tight with annoyance. "Stop stealing her credit," she snapped. "Why must you always compete with your sister?" Murmurs spread through the crowd. An uncle patted my shoulder awkwardly. "No need to be jealous of your sister's success, Stephanie. You have your job, and she has her creativity." I stood frozen, humiliation washing over me in waves. Sienna was nowhere to be seen, having conveniently disappeared when the conversation turned to money. My father was still glaring at the check as if it were a personal insult rather than a token accompanying my real gifts. "I need some air," I managed to say, turning away from the judgmental stares and whispered comments. Outside in the parking lot, I gulped the warm evening air, fighting back tears that threatened to ruin my carefully applied makeup. My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer, my old college roommate and one of the few people who truly knew me. "How is the family circus going?" she had written. I typed back, "They think I sent 60 cents instead of dollars as a gift, while believing Sienna has been supporting them for years with my money. I cannot do this anymore." Jennifer's response was immediate. "Oh, honey, I am so sorry. What are you going to do?" A strange calm settled over me as I made my decision. I am going to stop the payments. All of them. I opened my banking app right there in the parking lot and canceled the automatic transfer scheduled for the first of the next month. 4 years and over $200,000 later, I was finally cutting the financial cord. The relief was immediate and surprising. I did not return to the party. Instead, I called a rideshare to take me back to my hotel, sent a brief message to Sienna explaining that I had a migraine, and ordered room service. That night, I slept better than I had in years, as if a weight had been physically lifted from my chest. The next morning, I changed my flight to return to New York immediately. No one called to check on me or ask why I had disappeared from the celebration. No one noticed I had left the city. I was invisible to my family, except when I was being criticized or compared unfavorably to Sienna. On the flight home, I made another decision. I would wait and see what happened when the money stopped flowing. I would wait for them to come to me. Exactly 32 days after the anniversary party, my phone rang with my parents' home number. It was the first time they had initiated contact since I had left Chicago. I let it ring several times, my finger hovering over the decline button, before finally answering. "Hello? Stephanie?" My father's voice sounded strained. "How are you?" "I am fine, Dad. How are you and Mom?" I kept my tone neutral, professional almost. "We are concerned." He cleared his throat uncomfortably. "There seems to be a problem with Sienna's monthly transfer. It did not arrive on the 1st, as usual." So they still believed the money came from Sienna. Despite everything, the assumption stung. "That is strange," I replied, my voice steady. "Have you asked Sienna about it?" "We did, but she said there must be a bank error. She said she would look into it, but it has been 2 weeks now, and we have expenses that were counting on that money." I closed my eyes, gathering my resolve. Dad, I need to tell you something important. Those monthly transfers were never from Sienna. They were from me. I have been sending you $5,000 every month for the past 4 years. Silence filled the line, then a short, uncomfortable laugh. That is not funny, Stephanie. Why would you say something like that about your sister? It is not a joke. I can prove it. I have records of every transfer from my account to yours since August 4 years ago. Originally $2,000 per month, then increased to $5,000 after my promotion. This is ridiculous. Dad's voice hardened. Are you that jealous of your sister's success that you would make up stories to discredit her? I expected better from you. His immediate dismissal of my truth was exactly what I had feared, and precisely why I had never corrected their assumption years ago. But I was done being invisible. Check your bank statements, Dad. The transfers come from account number ending in 4736. That is my personal checking account. I can email you all the confirmation receipts if you need proof. I do not need to check anything, he insisted, but his voice had lost some conviction. Sienna told us about her fashion consulting business. She has important clients. Then why is her LinkedIn profile still listing her as seeking employment? Why does she keep asking me for loans that she never repays? Why did she move to a cheaper apartment last month? The questions tumbled out. Years of observations I had kept to myself. Dad had no immediate response. I could hear Mom in the background asking what was wrong. I am sending you the proof right now, I said, pulling up my email on my laptop. All the transfer receipts, bank statements, everything. I never said anything before because I did not want recognition. I just wanted to help. But I cannot let this lie continue, especially after what happened at your anniversary party. I composed the email quickly, attaching PDFs of 4 years' worth of bank transactions, all clearly showing transfers from my account to theirs. I also included screenshots of the cancellation confirmation from when I had stopped the automatic payments. Check your email in 5 minutes, I told him, and then call me back if you want to talk, but only if you are ready to hear the truth. I ended the call and waited. 20 minutes passed, then 30. My phone remained silent. An hour later, I received a notification that my email had been opened, but still no call. Finally, around 9 that evening, my phone rang again. This time it was my mother. "How could you do this to your sister?" she demanded without preamble. "She told us everything. How you have always been jealous of her. How you were trying to make her look bad because she finally found success." My heart sank. "Mom, did you actually look at the documents I sent? The proof is right there." "Documents can be manipulated," she dismissed. "We know our daughter. Sienna would never lie to us." The irony was almost laughable. "Mom, please just look at your own bank statements. Call the bank if you do not believe me. Ask them who has been making those transfers." "We do not need to involve strangers in family matters," she said stiffly. "Sienna explained that she has been routing the money through your account for tax purposes. That is why your name might be on some paperwork." The elaborate lie took my breath away. Sienna had thought quickly to protect herself, inventing a financial arrangement that my financially unsophisticated parents might believe. "That is not how taxes work, Mom. That would be tax fraud, and I would never participate in something like that. I am a licensed financial professional. I could lose my career." There was a slight hesitation before she responded. "Well, Sienna said you agreed to help her. She said you were finally trying to be a supportive sister." "Call the bank," I repeated firmly. "Just call them and ask. That is all I am saying." The conversation ended shortly after, with no resolution and no acknowledgement of my truth. I spent that night alternating between anger and grief, wondering if there was any relationship left to salvage with my family. 3 days later, my father called again. His voice was different this time, subdued. "We contacted the bank," he said without greeting. "They confirmed the transfers came from your personal account, not Sienna's, not a joint account, yours." "Yes," I said simply. "Why did you not tell us it was you all this time?" I took a deep breath. "Would you have believed me? You did not believe me 3 days ago with all the evidence right in front of you." He had no answer for that, There is something else you should know, he continued after a long pause. We spoke with Sienna again, tried to understand why she would claim credit for your generosity. She broke down and admitted some things. She has been unemployed for nearly 8 months. The fashion business never existed. She has significant credit card debt and has been borrowing money from friends to maintain appearances. The admission did not surprise me, but the fact that my parents had finally seen through Sienna's facade did. I am sorry, I said, not entirely sure what I was apologizing for. No, Dad's voice cracked slightly. We are the ones who should be sorry. We believed what we wanted to believe, and we have not been fair to you. Not now, and maybe not ever. It was the closest thing to an apology I had ever received from my father. I did not know how to respond, so I remained silent. The money, he said hesitantly. We have become dependent on it. Your mother has fully retired from the tailoring business because of her arthritis. My reduced hours at work, we cannot afford the mortgage payment without that monthly support. And there it was. After all the revelations, after the beginnings of acknowledgement, it still came down to the money. I am not going to resume the payments, Dad, I said firmly. Not until we resolve the real issues in our family. Not until we all sit down together and have an honest conversation about the past and the future. To my surprise, he agreed. Can you come to Chicago next weekend? We need to talk, all of us, face to face. That conversation would change everything. I arrived in Chicago the following Friday evening, this time staying at my parents' house rather than a hotel. The atmosphere was tense and awkward as Mom prepared dinner, speaking only when necessary. Dad retreated to his study, emerging only when called for the meal. Sienna arrived late, her eyes red and puffy from crying. We ate in uncomfortable silence, the only sounds the clink of silverware against plates and occasional requests to pass the salt. Finally, when we had finished and Mom began clearing dishes, I spoke up. We need to talk. That is why I am here. Let us not pretend everything is fine when clearly it is not. Dad nodded grimly. Living room. 5 minutes. We gathered in the formal living room, the one reserved for guests and special occasions. I sat in an armchair, while my parents took the sofa. Sienna perched on the edge of an ottoman, looking like she might bolt at any moment. I think we should address the immediate issue first, I began. Sienna has been taking credit for financial support that I have been providing for 4 years. I want to understand why. All eyes turned to my sister, who stared at her hands clasped tightly in her lap. I did not mean for it to happen, she said quietly. That first time, when Mom and Dad received the anonymous transfer, they assumed it was from me. I had mentioned wanting to help them financially once I got established. They were so proud, so happy. For once, they looked at me the way they always looked at you. What do you mean the way they looked at me? I asked, genuinely confused. Sienna looked up, tears streaming down her face. With respect, with admiration, like I had finally done something worthwhile. Mom made a small sound of protest, but Dad placed a hand on her arm, silencing her. I meant to tell them the truth, Sienna continued, but then the next month another transfer came, and they were so excited about my supposed success, it became harder and harder to admit the lie. And then, I started believing it myself. Like maybe if I pretended to be successful long enough, it would become real. But it never did, I said softly. Number. Everything I tried fell apart. Every job, every creative project, every relationship. Meanwhile, you were thriving, making more money than I could imagine, building this perfect life in New York. My life is not perfect, Sienna. Far from it. At least you have achievements, she burst out. At least you know who you are and what you are good at. I have spent my entire life being the fun one, the creative one, the baby of the family. But when it comes to actual accomplishments, I have nothing. Her raw honesty silenced the room. I looked at my parents, watching their reactions. Mom was crying silently, while Dad stared straight ahead, his jaw clenched. I think, I said carefully, That this goes much deeper than the money. This is about how we were raised, the roles we were assigned in this family, and the expectations placed on each of us. I turned to my parents. My entire childhood, I felt like I was less important than Sienna. Every sacrifice was expected of me because I was the older sister. Every achievement was minimized because it was just what you expected. Meanwhile, Sienna was celebrated for the smallest accomplishments, forgiven for every mistake, and given support I never received. Mom began to shake her head in denial, but Dad stopped her again. "Let her speak," he said quietly. "We need to hear this." So I spoke. I told them about the piano recital they missed, the birthdays that felt like obligations rather than celebrations, the constant message that my needs came second. I described the loneliness of college without their support, the hurt of graduations where Sienna's future dominated conversation, the years of feeling invisible unless I was being useful. When I finished, the silence was deafening. Then, to my surprise, Dad spoke. "You are right," he said simply. "We failed you, Stephanie. Not because we did not love you, but because we took you for granted. You were always so capable, so independent. Sienna seemed to need us more, so we gave her more attention. We never considered that you needed us too, just in different ways." His acknowledgement broke something open inside me. Tears I had held back for decades finally flowed freely. "All I ever wanted was for you to be proud of me," I whispered. "Not because I was useful or successful or responsible, but just because I was your daughter too." Mom moved from the sofa to kneel beside my chair, taking my hands in hers. "We were wrong," she admitted, her voice breaking. "So wrong. You deserved better from us. Both of you deserved better." She looked between Sienna and me. "We thought we were doing our best, but we created this competition between you. We made Stephanie feel unloved and Sienna feel inadequate. What kind of parents does that make us?" "Human ones," I said, squeezing her hands. "Imperfect, like all of us." The conversation continued late into the night. Sienna admitted her envy of my academic success and financial stability. I confessed my jealousy of her creativity and the unconditional love she seemed to receive. Our parents acknowledged their role in creating and reinforcing these dynamics, often unconsciously. By dawn, we were exhausted but somehow lighter. Nothing had been fully resolved, but the truth had finally been spoken aloud after decades of silence. It was a beginning. Before I left Chicago that Sunday, I had an individual conversation with each family member. With Sienna, I established boundaries around money, but offered to help her find career counseling and possibly internships in New York if she was serious about starting fresh. With Mom, I accepted her tearful apology and promised more frequent visits, but also made clear that our relationship needed to be more reciprocal. With Dad, I was most direct. "I will not resume the monthly payments," I told him firmly. That created an unhealthy dynamic, and it enabled Sienna's deception. "But I will help you and Mom create a realistic budget and retirement plan based on your actual income. And for genuine emergencies, I will always be there." He nodded, accepting my terms without argument. "I am proud of you, Stephanie," he said, the words I had longed to hear for so long. "Not because of your money or your job, but because of who you are. Your strength, your integrity. I should have told you that every day of your life." "Better late than never," I replied, allowing him to pull me into a proper hug for what felt like the first time. As for Sienna, our conversation revealed how much healing she needed to do as well. The patterns established in childhood had left her insecure and dependent, unable to forge her own identity separate from being the favored child. "I do not know who I am without their approval," she admitted. "You had to become independent because they pushed you away. I never learned how, because they always cushioned me from consequences." "Then maybe that is what you need to discover now," I suggested. "Who Sienna is when she is standing on her own 2 feet, making her own choices, facing her own challenges." She agreed to enter therapy and to take a retail job to start addressing her debt. Small steps, but significant ones toward independence and honesty. None of us harbored illusions that 4 days of difficult conversations could undo decades of dysfunctional family patterns. But for the first time, I left Chicago feeling hopeful that change was possible. Not perfect resolution, but progress. Not instant healing, but the beginning of a more honest relationship. 2 years have passed since that life-changing weekend in Chicago. So much has changed, yet some things remain works in progress, as they probably always will be in families as complex as ours. My career continued to flourish. Last year, I was promoted to vice president at my firm, managing a team of 12 analysts and overseeing portfolios worth billions of dollars. The promotion came with another substantial salary increase, but this time, I prioritized balance alongside success. I started leaving the office by 7 most evenings. I began dating more seriously, recently meeting a kind, thoughtful architect named Gabriel, who understands my drive but encourages me to make space for joy. Sienna has undergone perhaps the most dramatic transformation. After 6 months of therapy and working retail, she discovered a genuine talent for visual merchandising. She enrolled in a certificate program and now works as an assistant visual merchandiser for a department store chain. The position suits her creative instincts, but provides the structure she needs. She still struggles with comparing herself to me, but less frequently and with more self-awareness. She has been steadily repaying her debts and recently moved into her own studio apartment without financial help from anyone. My parents have adjusted to their new financial reality. Dad increased his work hours slightly, and Mom took on a few select tailoring clients whose work she genuinely enjoys. They downsized to a smaller house, reducing their mortgage substantially. I helped them create a realistic budget and set up automatic payments for their bills. For their anniversary last year, I took them on a weekend trip to Michigan, focused on creating memories rather than material gifts. The healing process has not been linear. We have had setbacks and difficult moments. Dad occasionally slips into old patterns of comparing us or dismissing my feelings. Mom sometimes still coddles Sienna out of habit. Old wounds do not disappear overnight, and sometimes innocent comments reopen them unexpectedly. The difference is that now we talk about these dynamics openly. We name them. We address them. We apologize when necessary and forgive when possible. We are learning, slowly and imperfectly, how to be a healthier family. My own healing journey required professional help as well. Weekly sessions with Dr. Larson, a therapist specializing in family trauma, helped me recognize how deeply my childhood experiences had shaped my adult behaviors. My workaholic tendencies, difficulty accepting praise, reluctance to ask for help, and wariness in romantic relationships all stemmed from those early messages about my worth being tied to my usefulness. The goal is not to forget or to pretend the past did not happen, Dr. Larson told me. The goal is to understand how it shaped you, take what serves you, and consciously release what does not. Gradually, I learned to set boundaries without guilt. I practiced receiving compliments without deflection. I allowed myself to need others and to express that need openly. I recognized that vulnerability is not weakness, but courage. Perhaps the most profound shift came in how I view myself. For so long, I had defined my worth through achievement, productivity, and financial success. If I was not excelling, I was failing. If I was not useful, I was worthless. Breaking free from that mindset has been my greatest challenge and my most meaningful victory. I no longer send regular payments to my parents, but I do contribute to a family emergency fund that we established together. Transparency and clear boundaries have replaced secretive transfers and assumed obligations. We discuss financial matters openly, acknowledging that money in our family had become tangled with love, worth, and power in unhealthy ways. Sienna and I speak weekly now, our conversations increasingly honest and supportive. We are learning to be sisters without competition, to celebrate each other's unique strengths without comparison. Last month, she called just to tell me she was proud of how I handled a difficult client situation I had mentioned previously. The simple acknowledgement meant more than any award or promotion. My relationship with my parents has evolved into something more adult and equal. They still occasionally fall into old patterns, but now I can gently point this out without anger or resentment. Dad has become more expressive with his pride in both his daughters, making a conscious effort to acknowledge our different kinds of success. Mom calls regularly just to chat, not only when she needs something or wants to talk about Sienna. The journey has taught me that sometimes you have to break a pattern to heal it. Sometimes you have to stand firm in your truth, even when those you love resist hearing it. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to participate in a dynamic that hurts everyone involved. I have learned that forgiveness does not mean forgetting or pretending harm never occurred. It means choosing to move forward without allowing past wounds to determine your future. It means recognizing that people can change when given the opportunity and motivation to do so. Most importantly, I have learned that my value was never dependent on what I could provide, achieve, or endure. My worth was inherent all along, just as Sienna's was. We were both deserving of love, recognition, and support, just in different ways that our parents struggled to provide. If you have ever felt invisible in your own family, if you have carried the weight of expectations while watching others receive the warmth of unconditional love, know this: you are not alone. Your feelings are valid. Your needs matter. And it is never too late to speak your truth and create healthier boundaries. Sometimes you have to lose something to find yourself. And when you find yourself, the relationships that matter will find their way back to you, not in the form you expected, but in the form you deserve. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members? How did it change your relationship? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear these words today. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember that your worth is not determined by what you give, but by who you are.